What's up, folks? It's O'Teal. I know it's been a while, but I had to take a little break there. So much has been going on between the sphere and my mom and everything, but my plate was just full. And but in the interim, I have decided to do some things a little differently. I just know some really fascinating people, and they're not famous, but they have some amazing lives and stories to tell. And one of them is a guy who is named David Bader, who I met my very first tour, I believe it was, with Dead and Company. I went to Atlanta airport, and I think it was a connecting flight. And that's where I met Tracy Thaler and David Bader. You guys have heard me talk on the podcast about over the years. And, it took me years to get to know them and know all the layers. But David is he is a computer genius. So he has all these titles and stuff and awards from things that that I don't even know, from the CRA and the IEEE and the ACM and the AAAS and all this stuff. The thing that caught my eye was this. The Computer History Museum recognizes Bader for developing the first Linux-based supercomputer, which became the predominant architecture for all major supercomputers in the world. And he gets into that a little bit on the podcast. He is just a genius and was winning all these math competitions very young. And then at a really young age, because of his computing, just being like an ET with computers, he met Ken Kesey. And things changed then, as they often did for everybody when they would meet Ken Kesey. And then he went on to have all these adventures with John Perry Barlow, who was the lyricist for Bob Weir, but also another guy on the frontiers of computer science, and started this Electronic Frontier Foundation, which is really something set up to preserve internet freedom, which he could see would be endangered. And it is now. We have censorship and all of this, how it is now. So it's just fascinating to meet a person like this. But David also has some, he doesn't just use like a materialistic, reductive process for his calculations and supercomputing genius. It comes from this place that art also comes from, and I'm gonna let him explain that too. Part of it deals with synesthesia, like he sees colors attached to numbers. So it's like, and my brother had that where he saw colors attached to different notes. So, but that's part of David's whole process. It's just fascinating, where it's super, the most cutting edge science meets art, music, the world of magic, like he believes in magic like I do. So this is we have these conversations all the time. And I was like, man, we really should have this conversation on the podcast. So I think you'll really enjoy it. And love ya. David, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
I'm really looking forward to
it. I'm going in some different directions with the podcast now because I just know so many interesting people, and I continually meet these fascinating people, and there's these weird intersections, that happen. And I was like, these stories need to be told as much as like the famous or whatever people, but I met, as I probably said in the intro, we met my very first year of Dead and Company, and that fateful day at the airport. And I had no idea, like, you know, all the layers of David Bader. Actually, up until right now, even when I was like, wow, we really need to have you on. So one of the first things I want to talk about is this whole, you have such an incredible science background, but I've been reading Jeffrey Kripal, who always talks about these scientists that are not using just a reductive, you know, materialistic, whatever viewpoint, like it's coming to them from the place that art comes to artists, apparently. And so the other day I asked you, like, do you have any kind of mystical thing involved in your computations or how you did? And you were like, yeah, I never used to work math problems out in my head. I never did it that way. And you've mentioned this thing with colors. Can you explain that?
Yeah, you know, I think science and art and innovation are all tied together. And I hadn't really thought about this for a number of years till we were chatting about it. And when I was in school, I would enter and do really well in math competitions at in the state of Pennsylvania. And when there would be math problems we have to solve really fast, very complicated problems, everyone else would be there with their pencil and paper, writing things down, formulas, all of that. And for me, I'd look at the problem and I'd see these lights shooting around in my head. And in a split second, I would just have the answer to the problem. So all of my thought process was kind of like just in this other domain. And, you know, there's lights, every color was, and I would just see these flashes, kind of like beams, laser beams of different colors, all shooting around my head. I just have the answer. I'd be asked, how'd you solve that problem? I don't know the method. I looked at it and it just came to me. But I
But you
thought
saw
about it.
these colors first, and then it would just come to you.
Yeah, the answer would. So, for instance, I would see yellow was the number two, or green the number three, red was four, blue five, purple six, seven was orange, and so I just in my head, I don't know at what point, like from my earliest memories, I remember seeing colors and numbers as the same thing. That I would associate a number with a set of colors or different hues of colors.
Yeah, see, now my brother, who they discovered he had perfect pitch when he was 7. I'm sure they discovered you were an alien like him at 7 too. You know,
Yeah, I
he,
was doing
he,
math.
you were already doing it.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, just like Kofi, from the earliest days, I remember this just was coming natural to me. And I didn't realize I was such an alien. I thought, well, everyone thinks this way, everyone sees this way.
Kofi would get frustrated and early on because he thought, you know, what? You can't do that, you know, too. He didn't realize, you know, he realized later he was an alien. He was like, oh shit, you know. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he saw all colors with the musical notes. And then I did a post about it. And unfortunately, he passed away before I could circle back around and go, you know, which ones were which? Because I think I remember him saying that the note C was red. And so I'm fascinated by, is there a correlation between the number, the color, and the note? Because that's my thing,
Oh,
is I'm looking for correlation. I'm
yeah.
looking for a
So
pattern, you know.
red was four to me. So it'd be interesting to see what if my colors related to numbers, also related to the musical notes.
And
Something
it's
to
hard to
explore.
say because, you know, like I would have to correlate yours with Kofi's, which I don't remember. When I posted this, many people wrote in and they told me there's an actual term for it called synesthesia. And it's when you associate colors with whatever other thing. Um, I guess be it numbered notes. Uh, And so different people had different, like everybody's C wasn't red. Somebody
Yeah,
else, their
yeah.
C was yellow, which I find fascinating because Dave and I were just on the phone right before this. And he said, "Hey, I found this email. What from what year was it?"
2011, 13
Yeah.
years ago, talking about it. And in the email, I said, "Oh, I was explaining this a couple years before." And it's like thinking about it is like trying to remember what happened in a dream. So trying to pull out the colors to the numbers. But that email that I sent, I had just been to a lecture by Alex and Allison Gray, visionary artists,
I love
and
them.
it just connected in my brain. And in that email, as I shared with you, I talk about the visionary arts and seeing colors and geometries and that structure. And I even wrote something in that email I hadn't remembered that perfect structures would bother me because I would look at the geometry for is there a flaw somewhere? So I was like things that were just off from perfect, which were calming than, an absolute perfect structure.
Interesting, calming. You find it calming. I think it's that it's more natural. You know, it's
Well, I think
interesting.
sometimes things can be too perfect and then they're not human anymore. So we need to have things that kind of flow a bit more or are a little bit more fluid.
Yeah, amazing. And it's funny because I asked you before, but I want to ask you again uh, on the podcast. Didn't you feel like you had to keep this a secret from your peers, like by high school? Because everybody knows how advanced you are at an early age, right? That's why I wanted you to take a picture of that League of the Sufficiently Twisted, because
Yeah.
you look really young then. I know you were 18, but um,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
not something that you had to keep a secret from your peers.
Well, I never thought about it. I had some friends and I used to go to the woods with my Boy Scout friends in camp and I was in the band in high school. But I also was a normal kid. I was a freaking alien in elementary school through high school and that you don't always fit in as an alien. So, I was just trying to basically survive the hallways, uh, get my work done and make sure I came home alive every day.
We're
So
just
I
trying to
wasn't.
get through the day and make A's. That's why I was like, I just can't do both. You know, you
But
gotta pick
it
it.
wasn't until college, as I met more people, that I realized, wait a second, like these are also some pretty darn smart people, but they don't have the skill. Am
Yeah.
I the only one? I never found until recently, never found other people with that skill. And it was yesterday I was talking with Sage, my kid, on the phone, and they mentioned synesthesia, and I hadn't heard that term before. So there's a name they put to it. Who knew? Who knew?
Yeah. It's there's nothing new under the sun. That's what these Kripal books talk about. Authors of the Impossible, um, the Flip. He talks about these scientists, and it's always the heaviest ones, the most, Max Planck and Einstein, Newton. You just go down the line. He goes through Nobel Prize winners. This guy says, the thing came to me in a dream.
Yeah, yeah,
Descartes said, an angel came to him in a dream and said, the mastery of nature will be found in measure and number. And that's what started him on his path.
yeah. It's profound.
Nietzsche, I'm finding out. I wish that I had known this when Butch Trucks was still alive. All these people are like really, they're tapping into this right brain thing that is where the artistic part comes from. And this is where I want the conversation to kind of go now. Because I feel like we had a lot of this in common. I had
Yeah,
both Kofi and I, Kofi's talent exceeded mine, his gift. I don't have perfect pitch, but I very much felt like an alien all, the whole time. And I was just like, man, this is rough. But the music thing was kind of a little bit more noticeable, you know? So I was able to like write it that way. But then later on, it was like, what am I going to do now? But at this point you met Kesey. How did you started meeting people that really,
Yeah.
had a
So
profound influence.
I love music because music, like colors and numbers, just kind of let my brain be free and let it escape the three dimensions of space, four dimensions with
Yeah.
time. And so
Yeah.
music really took me to another place. And I was early into computers. I had my first access to a computer in 1972. I was 3 years old. I could type before I could read and write. And in the early days of computers, there were message channels called Usenet, and you
Usenet, I
could
remember.
chat with people. And I would be talking about parallel and high performance computing, real nerdy stuff I was into, but also I was following music. And I just happened to come across online a character named Ken Kesey. What did I know? I was just a youngin'. And he was very interesting.
How old were you at this point?
God, I don't know. I was
Yeah.
young. I was young. But I was meeting some of the computing greats back when I was like um, in my like before I was even a teenager.
Wow.
Maybe that this was early '80s. I would say
Yeah.
when I maybe 1982 about then, and I met or chatted with people like Ken Kesey, who was interested in how to bring technology like computing
Mm.
into art and performance and how does technology and computing change. The killer micro, the PC, really emerged in 1981. So Kesey was a warrior. He was ahead of his time thinking about this. And for me, this confluence of eras was so fascinating. So I started chatting with Kesey and became his um, just a kind of advisor talking about computers and technology,
Yeah.
how he could use it, and eventually interacting with people like Timothy Leary, who, as you know, wanted to, when he ultimately passed on, wanted to do it in front of a computer on a live stream, I think much earlier than anyone else had thought about how to use technology. But for instance, with Kesey, I would get things in the mail that would scare my mailman. Like I get these wacky types of tubes and things painted. Um, and I would get things stuck here. I don't know, noisemakers and just random stuff. But Kesey made a badge for me for the. It says "Head Whiz Kesey hereby proclaims that David Bader is in the Legion of Sufficiently Twisted." And so when I could go and see the Grateful Dead, I could always go backstage, hang with Kesey, and just learn a lot from him, chat with him, and all of that. It was fantastic to have those adventures.
Was he surprised when he met you, like how young you were? Because when like sometimes I see people like I'm not a gamer, but I have friends that are like gaming, and they're like, you find out there's this dude whipping my ass as a little kid, like.
Yeah, well, no, Kesey treated me like absolutely like a peer, and he was so much older than me. But it was finding a long lost friend, and we would
Yeah.
have late night chats when he'd come east later to negotiate with the Smithsonian for putting further in the Smithsonian. He would then hang out, and we would just have a great time talking late into the night and about all sorts of things about life and what life is. Being a warrior, I remember these talks he would have with me about making a difference in this world. So that I was young and impressionable. and thought,
Yeah.
wow, you can make a difference. And
Well,
that's really due to
especially with
Kesey.
your brain, you can really make a difference. But good because that's how great. I always think of these people as like so uninspired. And I know that it's often the case because you were like feeling the same way. And you're one of the
Yeah,
like smartest people there. And you're like, wow, they really don't get it, But there is, I feel like the best ones are inspired. And there's something of this mystical thing that has everything to do with your heart and why you would have these conversations with Kesey, like why it was important to be a warrior
yeah.
and important to do something to change it just because you can see, you
Yeah.
know?
And I mean, that's when I realized that it was an incredible gift. And, you could just sit around and do nothing and just enjoy life, or you could use it. It's like a
Yeah.
magical power you have, and that you
Yeah.
could change the world. And you don't need a team of people, you don't need a million followers. You, as an individual, could actually make a difference. And that's what I really picked up on. And for me, that really required pulling together music and art and scientific computing and all these things that you would never say go together, but really
Yeah.
were the foundation of what I've been able to do with my life and my career.
Yeah. So now how do you find your tribe of people to do that? You met Keys, I'm sure that helped. When did Barlow come soon after that?
Now, Barlow was actually a little
Like,
bit later in life. So I was part of kind of like a think tank group where Barlow was on the board. And we go to these meetings held maybe 4 or 5 times a year, where we hang out. And it was a lot of C-level executives, like chief technology officers of major multinational companies talking about technology and futures. And they were wearing suits and things like that. And Barlow and I just connected. Yeah,
just money,
yeah.
money, money,
Like,
money,
how do
money.
I do innovation to make my business better? Fascinating discussions. I would learn a lot. But then John Perry was interested in, at the time he was working on a new business basically to turn shit into power. So he was
That's awesome.
he was trying to take sewage and create energy from sewage, which,
That's Road Warrior.
fascinating startup.
Yeah.
Um, but he and I would go off, and we had some of my craziest nights were with him in places like Vienna or places like London, where we'd be going around Europe and just having some amazing adventures. In fact, the craziest night of my life was with Barlow in Vienna, where I did not know that morning that by nighttime he and I would be backstage with Rihanna at her concert in Vienna, and then, going out on the town to some underground dance clubs. I actually I tucked Barlow into bed at the hotel, and then I went back out all night long. He had to give a talk at 8 a.m., and I walked in a few minutes before 8 a.m. So he had his, a couple hours of rest before he gave his talk. And I just walked in, but he and I had such a great time. I still, I'm just so, the magic of being with Barlow was fantastic.
Some people have a lot of magic in and around them, and things just are more everything, you know? And he clearly was one of them. I'm so glad that him and Bob linked up and, those two souls came together like Garcia and Hunter, And
Exactly. But
that's
I think just like us meeting there, you and I, there's no coincidences. My
no.
running into Kesey and then Barlow. I mean, who would have thought that I would just meet some amazing people? It's just absolutely incredible. And these just happen, they just
Yeah.
unfold. And
It's specifically because of the computer.
That's right. Yeah,
Like a lot
yeah.
of people, well, and some people, for those who don't know, John Perry Barlow was a lyricist that worked with Bob Weir, but he also started the electronic, or was part of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, right? Which
That's
is
right.
basically dealing, trying to promote or keep internet freedom.
Yeah, he was such a visionary thinker early on about this new dimension of cyberspace, where today we would probably call it social media and the cloud and AI and things like that. But he was trying to think about this new frontier and how do we keep it free as in freedom for
Yeah.
the for everybody out there. And he wrote a treaty on this. Absolutely fantastic thoughts and words that came out of Barlow.
Yeah. It's so, and it's crazy to think that, that even though you were hanging with Kesey at a very, like, crazy time, your wildest times were with John Perry Barlow.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Kesey would tell me a lot of stories and things like that.
Maybe
But
you
yeah,
were wilder later.
I mean, I was probably anyway.
You
I'll
don't have to say.
refrain from talking. But no, Barlow, it was just, his body was starting to give out a little bit. Um,
Uh,
as you may know, he had some surgery and eventually his health declined. In fact, the last time he and I saw each other was backstage at Shoreline. And I remember it was you're about to sing during the second set, one of, breaking out a new song for Dead and Company. But I got to see Barlow one last time and he was in a wheelchair. And it
yeah.
took him a moment to kind of look up and recognize me and grab my hand and just we had kind of maybe a final moment there together.
Yeah. Man, that's so beautiful. So what do you think, uh, putting the two of them together, how do you carry this forward in your life now in the science world? Because I feel like, science, a lot of scientists I feel like are coming out of the closet about these more mystical things,
Yeah,
and they're either like, I used to get so mad at Neil deGrasse Tyson. I was like, bro, you're an astrophysicist. Like, that's a small world. Come on, don't tell me, don't poo poo all of it. Or you should be curious about it at least, right? Like, there's enough info out there. But now a lot of these scientists like Gary Nolan, like, you can't mess with these guys. They're like, Neil, stop it. So do you feel like
yeah,
it's something that you're able to, I mean, obviously you feel able to open it up about, you come on my podcast and talking about it, but it's not in
yeah.
like academia though.
Well, in academia, academia is so siloed. Every discipline is in its own. They have blinders on to anything
Yeah.
else, and it's
Yeah.
slow to change. But I was always a disruptor. So I did my PhD in electrical engineering. I was then in a faculty member in a department for electrical and computer engineering. I then was in computer science. I then founded a school at Georgia Tech called Computational Science and Engineering. And now I'm at New Jersey Institute of Technology as a distinguished professor in data science. And so nothing ever
You keep
defined
going.
me. And when I think about it, what it was is all the interesting problems in this world are at the interface between these traditional siloed disciplines. And if you want to make a change, you have to blur, get out of these lines and silos and bring people
Yeah.
together who are
Integrate
willing
them.
to understand everything in the cosmos, pull it all together. So I've now done two startups in academia. I created a new school at Georgia Tech. I founded it and chaired it. Computational Science and Engineering looks at applying computing towards real world problems coming from science and engineering. Or now at
Yeah.
NGIT, data science, we know really cuts across every aspect, every sector in the economy, transportation, security,
Yeah.
music and entertainment, gaming, manufacturing, food production. Everything needs data science, AI. And so I'm at another moment in time where we can really try to get people to break out of the walls and limitations of academia and really work together to solve these great problems.
Yeah. I hope that it's able to happen like open source, because I feel like, the reason I know things being siloed is part of the problem, but money is also part of the problem. The people will lose a lot of money if these problems are figured out,
Yeah, yeah,
or solved. Actually, only if they're solved. They can be figured out. It's if
yeah.
they're solved that there's where they start losing money. And that's where I hope that the kind of open source nature of it, where you just can't stop people. It was like music, they wanted to segregate white people from black culture, but they couldn't actually segregate the dial on the radio because you could just turn it the other way. And they were like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
And it was like Howlin' Wolf, Little Richard and whatever, like, what? That they're not allowed to listen to it over here. But in England, all these guys that got so big were listening to all the blues guys. So I'm hoping in the same way, what you're doing, like, can't be stopped by
Yeah, back in the when I was a very young little person, this big, I was born in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and where the Kimmocks are from. Um, and at my Bethlehem Public Library, there would be some musicians, and I didn't know who they were when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, but it was Pete Seeger and Arlo Guthrie. Um, as as you may know, Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie, Arlo's father, founded a musical organization, Sing Out, in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I have no idea why they chose Bethlehem, but I would be exposed to Pete Seeger and Arlo Guthrie. And that was, I didn't realize these were really thought leaders in terms
Yeah.
of music and folk music. In fact, Pete Seeger worked with the Library of Congress, and they wanted music in the folk process to be able to allow anyone to create music, create derivative works, and really
Yeah.
democratize music versus lock it up. Music should be
Yeah.
free. And that stuck with me so that during my scientific career, I wanted to democratize things. And
Yeah.
as you may know, I democratized high-end computing. Every supercomputer and cloud computer is based off of an invention I had in 1998. I built the very first supercomputer made with commodity parts and the Linux operating system. And that then became the de facto standard for how every organization, small to large, does their computing. And now I'm aiming to democratize data science. I want everyone to be able to work on large data science and graph analytic problems, whatever that means. Really doing some Python and Jupyter, all these things in data science. But imagine it doesn't fit on your laptop. You say, oh, the problem's too big. Well, I want everyone to be able to use supercomputers in the background to do this. And I have open source software on GitHub where our lab is working on that. So we've democratized high-end computing. Now we want to democratize data science, machine learning, and AI.
You're going to endanger your own life, David, if you keep messing around.
I think I've already
awesome.
lived past my expiry point, so all this is bonus time. We're on the encore.
That's right. I love it. I love it. That's how, I love this guy, Ben Goertzel, who's one of the AI cats, and he was the first guy to make me feel positive about it because, he starts out saying, look, the most money spent on AI is surveillance, advertising, and military. It just is what it is, right?
Yeah.
But they have this open source AI that is programmed specifically to only be of benefit. And he says, the AI will find some kid got a tablet in Africa or Siberia or anywhere and realize this kid's a genius, and and the AIs from different places are linked up together already. Like they're already learning from each other and whatever. The cat's already out of the bag. And I was like, well, that's cool. At least there's something happening. So whenever I hear open source, I'm like,
Well, there should be
I
open
wave the
source,
flag,
open models. People should be able to see the data that these models are trained on. So, as you know, AI today often means large language models, where a couple of big tech companies have sucked in all the information they can find on the internet that you and I have produced and others. And then they do a lot of supercomputing to crunch it into an object called a model that then is kind of like an oracle to be able to answer questions or provide insights and so on. But it would be nice to know what they were learning on and, think about your privacy. Have they ingested anything that could leak out that is very private? For instance, what if a company trained on your personal emails or text messages? That would be a little surprising.
I just assumed that privacy is over for everyone already. That it's done.
Oh, I assumed that decades ago.
Yeah, so it's
first, I was paranoid at first when I realized every government knew everything about me, every company, Google, Microsoft. And then at some point it was freeing because I don't have to worry. I'm an open book. There is no secret.
Everything. I found this on a personal level with Colonel Bruce. And it doesn't mean that I can't be shamed. I certainly can't, But Colonel Bruce, if he was sleeping close to you, like at a certain point, where they call it the hypnagogic state, where you're not all the way awake and you're not all the way. So he would know everything that's going on in your life. And I was like, wow. I roomed with him, a number of times, frequent. And I was like, I have no secrets from this guy. Like, none. He can't even help it. It wasn't like he was doing it on purpose. How weird that must be. Wake up like, but it's a freeing. There's, like you said, there's a freeing part. It's like, okay, so everybody's everything is somewhere. Everybody's secrets are all somewhere.
I wonder
eventually they're all going to come out.
Yeah. I wonder who knew Colonel Bruce's secrets, who absorbed them.
Well, I know for a fact that people that were on, I got the COINTELPRO book from my mother when I was about 25 or 6. COINTELPRO, for people that don't know, all this came out from the Freedom of Information, and it's short for Counterintelligence Program, which the FBI had run on all these civil rights activists, so a lot of it's blacked out, but you could see the exact number of characters would have been Martin Luther King Jr. or whatever, like they know it's all, we figured out all the ops. So I'm sitting there in the van in the early ARU days, like 89 to 92, reading this book. And I'm like, oh man, I'm reading the names. Dave Dellinger, Great Speckled Bird, right? And Bruce goes, Dave Dellinger. I was like, what? He goes, he comes to see you at the college club. I was like, what? And the paper, I actually have a thing with it here. So we start seeing the names of people that Bruce was hanging out with in this book. So I know that. Plus, Bruce was an extraterrestrial. You can't tell me there ain't a file on him at the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the everything. I know they were watching him. They were watching me because I was with them. Of course, they've been watching me since David, I've told you, since first grade. And not get away from the CIA and all this stuff. It's just like always around me all the time. So it is what it is. But yeah, that stuff, Colonel Bruce, all of it, I'm just like, it is what it is. I'm free. I know that I have this magical power now. I know if I tell too many people, and I'm not popular enough, so I'm not any danger. I'm in no danger of being killed. But that's my feeling, is that we're all the aliens, and we all have some magical power or a number of them. And we've been gaslit. It's dangerous if we know that we have superhuman powers. right? You can't have
Yeah,
everybody realizing like, oh, so I'm like one of the X-Men. It's like, yeah, we don't know what it is yet, but you got something in there. That's
yeah.
dangerous. I think. I'm glad you're using your powers for good.
Well, I've been doing my genealogy and I haven't found an alien in the past yet, but we'll see. I've been checking my DNA regularly.
We're all hybrids. Look, don't you find us to be anomalous as a
I think
species
so.
on the planet?
Yeah,
There's only one bipedal species on the planet. One, nature doesn't do like that. There's a lot of 4-footed, a lot of 6-footed, a lot of, there's just a lot. It's one.
yeah. We are special. We are special.
Yeah. I think, didn't they? I thought I saw recently that they said there's DNA in humans that they can't account for.
Oh, I don't know if I've seen that yet, but there's a lot of new understanding about how Homo sapiens versus Neanderthals interacted with each other, and did we kill off the Neanderthals? Did they just die out? But we certainly, all of us, have Neanderthal DNA in us.
Yeah, we got
Um,
it, sir.
but I'm sure there's unexplained DNA as well, because unless you can do time travel and go back, maybe someday
Yeah.
we will. It'll be hard to really know where all that DNA came from.
Yeah. And now they're finding other species of, I don't even know if they're called sapiens, but they're like, oh, wait a minute, there's a bunch more. Africa, you keep digging, you find some hey guys, guess what? We got to rewrite this whole thing again. So,
Yeah,
but I find us to be very anomalous on this planet. So I don't have a problem with the ancient alien thing, they came here and took a primate and just did an experiment, which has clearly gone horribly wrong, but also amazingly right too. With the mystical part in there, I have to go, wow, it is worth it. It's
yeah.
worth, because how do you feel about the future? This brings me to the other part that I want to get to is are you hopeful, about the future?
I'm optimistic because I think, as humans and a species in this planet, we've always figured out how to do bigger and better things. And there are people like you and me that want, society to be better and for us to spread that magic to other people. So I'm
Yeah.
optimistic that as long as we have one person who is a bright, shining light, then
Yeah.
humans will continue to do well. There are challenges. Everything today scares me. The climate,
That's
the
really, yeah.
the wars around the planet, and we're on the shared earth. And so there's many things that I think are going to be horrible for some time to come and maybe even get worse. But
Yeah.
on the other side of those, I'm very, very optimistic.
I think I try to always liken it to things in nature like childbirth, um, where it's bad, it's hard, both the mother and child can die. Happens all the time. But when it works, on the other side of that, it's just the most incredible miracle. And then you need, you know, sustained
Yeah,
series of miracles after that. But they come. Things
that's
do
a
go bad, but they now that I have children, I've been to some of my lowest lows, man, just recently, right after the sphere when my mom's health went down. It was just and then I had to go on tour. It was the hardest tour. And I just thought, oh my God, this is the hardest tour I've ever done. And I came home and then, in this deep, I know I'm going to have PTSD from it. But in all these deep, dark feelings, I would have Nigel on one side and Kavi on the other, or one of them would just say something or do something. And then the whole sun would just come out on my whole life and spirit. And it was like COTL, yeah, there's all this dark stuff. And then you're just bathed drenched in this light and love. It's like, don't forget about that too, man. And these concerts that we just did, you know, after having the worst tour ever, these last 4 dates were like, something just happened with the
Oh,
band.
it
It was
was
just like,
magic.
you
Yeah,
gotta
you know
keep
that
going.
it's such a great analogy about childbirth. Um, my kid Sage, and Sage also was there every time I thought the world was just bringing me down. I would think about Sage, and that would just change everything. And that connection, that circle of life. I who knows if I'd even still be here if I didn't have Sage and their support. So it's really, really, profound. But yeah, I saw the shows that you and the band did in Ardmore, the 2 shows there, and
Yeah.
at the Cap in Portchester, New York. Just mind blowing. Those were
Yeah.
out of this world. Just so fantastic to hear that music and see such an amazing band. What a treat.
I think honestly, your lower lows, you know, because of the pendulum, you know, or the sine wave, like it's going to go as much up as it goes down. So when you're brought lower, your joy is going to be higher on the backside if it doesn't take you out on the low side, you know. And the band walked with me through all that. They saw me just, you know, on the ground, face down on the ground, man. That 2 weeks was the hardest 2 week tour, man. Jesus. And then on
Yeah,
the other side of that, you know, we have this beautiful. Do you remember when Melvin went down? His health went down. He missed like the
yeah,
last, 3 or 4 shows. It was just like, I was like, oh my goodness, you know. But then we all came back up together, just like, whoa, we were all freaking out, man. Everybody.
yeah.
Everybody. You don't see Steve get that excited, get excited that often, you know, or Melvin, you know, and everybody was just like, what is happening?
Yeah, yeah.
So
I mean,
that,
what an amazing band. Tom Gorna and Steve Kimmock, Johnny Morgan Kimmock on drums,
yeah,
Lamar Williams Jr. on vocals,
Jason, yeah,
and
man.
Jason Crosby, multi-instrument talent, and everyone was at their prime. Those were some amazing shows. But I think, I was talking with Johnny Kimmock after the last show at the Cap, and we're both from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. The Kimmocks still live there. I learned to drive from Mr. Kimmock at Liberty High School, Steve's dad. So
No way. Oh my God. See,
it
here
was
we go again.
yeah, it was a Pontiac Sunbird, with the passenger side up front. He had the brake pedal, in addition to mine as the learning driver, and he wasn't afraid to use it to put the brakes on.
He knew he better use that.
But
Wow.
this
Wow.
connection to Bethlehem and the Kimmocks. But
Wow.
I was thinking, I always wondered about my life where I've moved around. All around the planet. I travel a lot,
Yeah.
giving keynote talks, running conferences and scientific meetings, meeting new scientific collaborators. I was just in Berlin for a Brain Connectomes meeting. I was just in Switzerland at the town of Chur, where H.R. Geiger was from,
Where
the
the Geiger
amazing
counter comes
artist.
from.
So
Oh no, he's an artist. I'm
yeah,
thinking
yeah. Geiger
Benedict.
was this artist that he worked with musicians like Deborah Harry and Chris Stein. Um, you
Oh
know, I,
wow.
but I'm seeing all this stuff, and I wonder what would my life have been without all these highs and lows versus living in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and just having this idyllic little life in this really nice town with some
Yeah.
great people, where everything is just nice and
Right between
um,
here and here. Yeah.
correct. Right between Easton and Allentown, right along the Monocacy Creek, the Lehigh River, and right there, and just spending all my days versus this amazing life, following around the Grateful Dead, Dead and Company, other bands and music, and
your life took a left early, you know.
yeah.
But that's really it's so beautiful. I don't know. I think it's great to know that, and no surprise to me that it's coming through the Grateful Dead community. That there are these people like you, that I've always been the one to synthesize things. You know, I want to see, how does this relate to that, even if it's opposite. You know, it's like, okay, so then there's still a relationship. They're opposing, you know, but there's something. I'm always seeking to get the holistic view of things. So in a materialistic paradigm, it's been so frustrating. You know?
Well, I think what's interesting are the communities around the Grateful Dead, and then bands like Dead and Company and others, where to us that was always our new dysfunctional family, a part of our birth families. And even now, like, I love meeting our friends. They're people that range in professions from surgeons to university professors to CEOs of large corporations, and on. And some run used bookstores, some have farms. It's everyone from everywhere, and it's just fantastic because we now have found each other. We've found our calling. We've found our brothers and sisters. And then during the music, it's just organic. We're not individuals out there. We're one organism that's moving and listening and connected to the band. And it's just so profound.
Yeah, because it's a microcosm of what could be a bigger, like all these different things coming together that are seemingly separate, but there's not. The separation is just a viewpoint. It's a concept, you know, the yin and yang. Yeah, they're separate. My fingertip can't smell anything, you know, but it doesn't mean they're not, you know, they're all part of this one thing, you know. So I'm glad to see it there, and it gives me hope because, like, the other thing we were talking about, you were telling me about this restaurant of some kind where it's not the best restaurant, but it's the popular restaurant because everybody goes and does explain that. I'm not saying it right, but it's not. This is the part that makes us not so hopeful about things.
So I live in Manhattan in New York City, and right across the street from me is a pizza place. And just about every block in Manhattan, you can find a pizza place. But and there's some places with great pizza, good pizza, okay pizza, 99 slices. You can get every type of pizza you want. But there's so many pizza places, there's never a line anywhere for pizza, except across the street from me. I sent you a photograph yesterday from the early morning to late at night. There's a line stretching down the block, around the corner, down the next block. There's 100 people in line for this pizza. And what you see them doing after waiting hours and hours in line for a slice of this pizza is they come across the street to my side where I live in my building. They hold up their pizza and they do their TikTok with the pizza restaurant in the back. And it's all about the TikTok and the being influencers and getting their likes. And it is about enjoying a nice piece of pizza with a friend. And there's people lining up before they open. There's signs on the posts, don't block the sidewalk, because all day long for now weeks and weeks and weeks, they've been just like moths to a flame. And I wonder, you could just go around the corner and get
another piece of pizza and stand in front of that place
with the same dough.
Why would you wait for hours? Yeah,
that's right. But this is the one that the influencers have found, and it's not just pizza; it's cookies, and we have a cookie restaurant probably every other block. But there's one that the influencers have found And again, lines and lines. And it's not just in New York. I travel. Um, I was just in another in the Midwest, and I saw another one of these same cookie stores with lines around the corner with people doing the same thing. So it's great
Well,
for those businesses, but you
yeah, I
know,
mean, go for it. But I would imagine
yes,
it's global. It's got to be going on in China. Shit, TikTok is Chinese.
yeah.
You
I
know,
imagine so. I don't actually use TikTok. I just
I don't
see it
either.
from friends. So
We have one,
I,
but
but
I'm
I
not. I
see,
don't do much.
everyone doing their little dance and tell me, oh yeah, they're posting to TikTok. As I say, hey, do they want a conversation? No, nobody wants to talk anymore. They just want to have their fans on their TikToks and their streams. But it's not like the old days where you used to, ride the subway or walk down the street and have conversations with people.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I every once in a while have to remind myself um, that decades and decades of my life, certainly more decades than not, were spent with zero time on social media. So
Yeah,
it's like, okay, and man, I'm telling you, as soon as I'm scrolling, I'm like, you're doing it again, and I stop. Now I do listen to podcasts all day long. I am on YouTube a lot, but I feel like that's like I'm learning, like I'm just not listening to people bullshit about. Even if I'm listening to a wrestling podcast, I'm learning about human nature. I'm learning about business and the politics of business and all. There's all these
yeah.
things that I'm learning. I'm not just scrolling, and certainly not just like pointing a camera. It's like look at me, like everybody's just look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. I don't
Yeah.
know. I think that's very dystopian.
I'm hopeful in the next generation that, things change. And while we're kind of the Facebook generation and maybe the next are Insta and TikTok, I think the generation after that will be the real world generation. And there could be ones who
Yeah.
just say, I don't need a smartphone. I just want to go out. And like the old days, we'll just
Yeah.
discover, we'll have, some great adventures. We'll meet up here, but I'm hopeful that there'll be a generation that comes along next that is just going to reject the just overindulgence
I
in
mean,
social
it's
media.
it's really weird. It's really weird. And I think
I,
like I look at it like as an alien coming from somewhere else. It's like all these people are just like focusing all their attention on themselves. Like you're not learning even just it's a solitary pursuit, but in learning the guitar, I'm like, I'm down the rabbit hole of something other than me,
yeah. I have a great story to tell you. When I was, I don't know, 2 years ago, I was in New York at the Museum of Modern Art. And I may have been wearing, as I do, an O'Teal shirt or a Grateful Dead shirt or something. And there's an opening of an exhibit, and I saw, this young kid running through, um, and just bright-eyed, looking at everything. And we bumped into each other, and it's like, oh, hey, I'm David, and his name Jake Kern, and we just had a great time. And it's, we didn't exchange numbers or anything like that, but it's like, wow, to meet someone who appreciates good music in this art museum. A few nights later, I'm at the bitter end seeing my cousin in a Grateful Dead cover band, and in the audience with me is the same guy, Jake. I'm like, oh my God, like we just met again. How weird is this? So fast forward a little bit. This summer at the Sphere, he would wait in line, and I got to know him and his dad Lowell a little bit better, even better. And earlier this summer, I'm in Bushwick in Brooklyn with going out to see a show there. I'm walking along the street, and I don't expect anyone knows me in Brooklyn. I hear my name called, David, David. I turn around, it's Jake. Like I see him again, like how freaking odd is this? But so I saw him at the camp just the other night.
I love
before your
it. That's
show.
great.
And he's saying, David, have you seen this thing on TikTok? I'm like, what are you talking about? And he pulls up, he follows a food influencer in New York. And this woman is talking about this vegan restaurant down the block from me called Chloe. Fantastic restaurant. But in the back of the video, I thought I was sneaking there to get a vegan cupcake and no one would know. And here I am, Jake finds out from TikTok that I got myself a vegan cupcake in the middle of the day. Holy shit, O'Teal. Like, just think about that. So, I don't
It's
know what
like
else he
dominoes.
did.
I mean, yeah, it's just okay. People can think
Everything,
what they
no
want.
coincidences.
Sorry, man. I'm
Jake and
sorry.
TikTok and all this privacy, it just all comes together for me.
It does. And it's such a relief to me, like when I found these Kripal books and I found out all these things about all these scientists that other scientists were saying was not happening. It was so encouraging. And then to like talk to you and just know there is hope, man. There's hope.
Yeah,
Like
I think the
just because
universe
there is
brings,
magic.
yeah, there's this magic and the universe brings people together as, you and I as friends and all of that, that the universe works in that way to bring these powers together. And I think that's why I'm optimistic. I think with that,
Yeah.
we're going to have those connections that we need and be able to bring together people and really change the world so that what Nigel Cobby Sage, our kids
Yeah.
all have is going to be so much more, so much better than where it is today.
It's supposed to like get better and better. And but we've seen this happen before when great civilizations have destroyed themselves really good and then a dark ages happens and so but I don't know. Nature seems to always replenish, recycle, reconcile. Uh, nature's ultimately, I guess, my hope and the reason I still have hope is I think nature is more powerful than us.
Yeah, and it recycles the atoms. I'm drinking ancient water, and think of where every atom in this water in my glass has been countless times before, and maybe through dinosaurs, maybe through aliens, who knows? And we're ingesting that, and that is what gives us life and continues our life.
I mean, I've that's a great thought to think. Something that happens to me all the time now is, I'll learn something that I didn't know before, and I'm like, man, I'm glad I lived long enough to learn that because just that alone was worth sticking around for. Like,
Oh, that's so cool.
it's hard, when enough people in your life pass away. My brother. This is such a weird thought. I never in my life thought that I could be Kofi's older brother. But now I'm 3 years older than when he passed. So
Wow.
now I'm the older, like,
Oh,
whoa.
wow.
So when I think about stuff like that, when I learn something new, I'm super, it's like, see, man, it's worth, fighting to be here. And of course I have my kids, so
Yeah.
you have much more stake, much more skin in the game, as it were. But
Yeah. I mean, I don't feel like we're aging and getting old. I feel still that enthusiasm, childlike enthusiasm to keep learning and to keep
yeah,
doing it. And, certainly we have children that are younger than us. But, we're good.
significantly.
When I was little, my dad used to make us children memorize two laws of genetics. One was if your parents never had children, chances are you won't either. And then insanity is her.
That's great.
And the second law of genetics, insanity is hereditary. You inherit it from your children.
Those are the two. You know, I think that's exactly where we should end. Those two extremely profound notes. Because boy, I learned that. You know, I had a vasectomy. I had no intention of having children. I was like, I wouldn't curse a child by bringing it to this place, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then the magic says whatever. But now that I have children, boy, have I learned that. You thought you were crazy before. Look at yourself, Oteil. Calm down. Well, thank you so much, man. This is really, I appreciate it because I feel like this is what we do anyway, you know?
Yeah, this is great. Only on camera now.
Yeah, I think more people should know, honestly. And thank you for doing this. It's been a real joy. And I hope we do it again because there's some other things that I would, you know, we only got an hour.
Yeah,
and I have
maybe
to be
we'll
respectful
have
of
to
your
do
time.
it and you'll save the tape for after I pass. You'll be able to put it on.
We could do so we could do the secret one. All right. With what do they call it? The kill switch, where it's like, I know these whistleblowers, they have a thing where they're like, if anything happens to me, all this is coming out. You know? So that's great to know. We could do a secret one. And you know me, man, I'll sit on that. I'll probably die before you do. So
no comments.
But at least it'll be on tape. When both of us go, our kids will know.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Love you, man. I know you got to go.
Yeah,
You're 1 minute over.
Oteil.
Bless you.
Take care.